In the scriptural justice system, the highest authority, the Most High Yah, is the judge and the jury. The seed of Israel are his children. These are their stories. Season 1, Episode 4, Into Africa's Interior. A massive map of Africa, 1000 to 1500 AD, dominates the wall. Coloured pins mark dozens of locations across West, Central and East Africa. Banks stands with a laser pointer, the team assembled. Banks. For 1500 years nobody talks about them. Hebrew refugees scattered into Africa after 70 AD. Historians act like they vanished into thin air. She points to the pins. But they didn't vanish. They settled. They built. They survived. And they left evidence. What kind of evidence? Every kind. Archaeological, linguistic, cultural, genetic, and testimonial. We're going to document it all. She clicks the remote. A photograph appears. An ancient stone structure in Nigeria. Okafor stands before a digital display showing the Igbo people of Nigeria. Okafor, the Igbo. Population today, over 40 million. Primarily in southeastern Nigeria. They've maintained oral tradition for centuries, claiming descent from the Israelites. Chen, oral tradition isn't evidence. Okafor, no. But it's a starting point. And when oral tradition matches physical evidence, linguistic evidence, cultural practice, and genetic markers, then it becomes a case. She clicks through images of Igbo cultural practices. Circumcision on the 8th day, exactly as commanded in Leviticus 12:3. Not the 7th, not the 10th. The 8th. Muslims circumcise, not on the 8th day specifically. That's uniquely Hebrew. The Igbo also observe a 4-day week, leading to a market day rest similar to Sabbath structure. They have ritual cleansing laws, separation of women during menstruation, kosher-like dietary restrictions. Banks, entering, tell them about the names. Okafor Igbo names have Hebrew parallels. Eze means king, similar to Hebrew Ezra. Na means father, like Hebrew Abba. Chi means God, similar to Hebrew Chai, meaning life. The linguistic retention is significant. Could be coincidence. Okafor, how many coincidences before it becomes a pattern? Watch this. She plays a video clip. An Igbo elder performing a ceremony. Elder, we are Eri's children. Eri, who came from the east, from the land of Gad, from Israel. We crossed the great river to this place. That's not fringe belief. That's mainstream Igbo origin story. They claim descent from Gad, one of the 12 tribes. They say they migrated from the east, which, from their perspective in West Africa, means the Middle East. Banks, and they're not alone. She pulls up a new map. More pins appear. The Lemba of Zimbabwe and South Africa, the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, the Abayudaya of Uganda, the House of Israel in Ghana, the Sefwi people in Ivory Coast. That's dozens of communities. All claiming Hebrew ancestry, all maintaining Hebrew-adjacent practices, all in Africa, all saying they've been there since ancient times. Conference room. Dr. Kwame Mensah-50's Ghanaian anthropologist sits across from Banks, a map of Ghana spread on the table. Mensah, you want to know about the Hebrew communities in Ghana? Banks, yes. Specifically, the House of Israel. They're in the northern regions primarily, thousands of them. They practice what they call the old ways. Saturday Sabbath, no pork, circumcision, festivals that align with biblical holy days. Banks. When did they arrive in Ghana? Mensah, according to their oral tradition, after the destruction of the First Temple, around 586 BCE. Chen, that's before even the 70 AD scattering. Yes, some came after Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. Others came after Rome destroyed it. Multiple waves of migration over centuries. Did they intermarry with local populations? Of course. They weren't isolated. They traded, married, assimilated in some ways, but they maintained core practices, core identity. Okafor. So by the time the slave trade began, they'd been in West Africa for 1,000 years or more. Mensah, yes, integrated but distinct, and when the slavers came, he trails off. Banks. They were captured like everyone else. Yes. Riley works with DNA charts spread across multiple screens. Okay. The genetic evidence is wild. Check this out. He pulls up a study. The Lemba, a lost tribe of Israel in southern Africa, 1999. Dr. Tudor Parfit, Oxford University. He tested the Lemba people who've been claiming for centuries they're descendants of Hebrew priests. And They carry the Cohen Modal Haplotype, the genetic marker found in Jewish priestly families, the Kohanim. The odds of that being coincidence? Statistically impossible. He pulls up another study, 2013, study of Beta Israel, Ethiopian Hebrews. Genetic analysis shows Middle Eastern ancestry consistent with Israelite origin. Not European, not Arab, Levantine. Banks, same region where ancient Israel was located. Exactly. And get this, recent studies of Igbo populations show genetic markers linking them to Middle Eastern populations, specifically Levantine groups. Okafor. So the oral traditions are backed by DNA. In multiple communities across the entire continent. These aren't wannabes or recent converts. These are people whose ancestors actually came from ancient Israel. But if they'd been in Africa for over 1,000 years, wouldn't they be genetically identical to other Africans? They mostly are. That's the point. They intermarried. They had children with local populations. But certain genetic markers, especially ones passed patrilineally, father to son, those can persist for generations. Banks like the Cohen marker, Riley like the Cohen marker. It's passed Y chromosome, father to son. Even after 1,000 years of intermarriage, if the priestly families kept marrying within the community or kept the paternal line pure, the marker survives. Okafor, which is exactly what we see in the Lemba. Banks presents to the assembled team. On screen, side-by-side comparisons. Banks, let's systematically compare Hebrew biblical practices with documented African practices in these communities. She clicks through a chart. Comparison table, biblical practice, Hebrew source, African community documentation. Eighth-day circumcision, Leviticus 12:3, Igbo, Lemba, anthropological studies 1920s present, Sabbath observance. Exodus 28, multiple West African groups, colonial records, missionary reports, no pork consumption, Leviticus 11:7, Igbo, Lemba, Beta Israel, documented by explorers, 1600s to 1800s, ritual purity laws, Leviticus 15, Lemba, Igbo, field studies 1950s present, Levirate marriage, Deuteronomy 25:5, Lemba, Parfit study, 1999. Priestly blessings. Numbers 6:24 to 26, Lemba Buba clan, recorded ceremonies, Pesach-like festivals, Exodus 12, Beta Israel Lemba, ethnographic records, tribal structure, Genesis Joshua, multiple groups, oral traditions documented Riley. That's not superficial, that's deep structural similarity. Okafor, these aren't practices you pick up from casual contact, these are covenant practices, things you'd only know if your ancestors lived them. Devil's advocate. Couldn't missionaries have taught them this? Banks, good question. When did missionaries arrive in these regions? Okafor, most of West Africa, 1700s to 1800s. Ethiopia had earlier contact through Coptic Christianity, but Beta Israel maintained distinct practices that predate that. And the practices these communities maintained were pre-Christian, their Old Testament Torah, not New Testament. Missionaries wouldn't have taught seventh-day Sabbath or avoidance of pork. Christianity had moved away from those requirements. So the only way they'd know these practices is if their ancestors brought them from Israel, directly. Research Lab Day. Okafor works with linguistic databases, comparing Hebrew to West African languages. Okafor language is hard to fake, especially religious language. Watch this. She plays audio clips side by side. Hebrew prayer, Baruch Atah Adonai. Lemba prayer, Baruchwe, Nwali. Okafor, the structure is similar, the cadence. The Lemba don't speak Hebrew fluently, they lost that over centuries, but their prayers retain Hebrew-like elements. She pulls up more examples. Linguistic retentions, Igbo, Sabbath market Rishabat. Lemba, Sena, holy, Hebrew Kadosh. Akan Nana, ancestor, elder. Hebrew Nana, lullaby but root meaning elder. Yoruba Edumare, God above. El Elyon. Those could be Arabic influence. Islam spread through Africa. Okafor, Islam uses Allah. These aren't Arabic words, and the practices that accompany them aren't Islamic. Muslims don't circumcise on the 8th day. They don't avoid pork and shellfish, but eat camel, which these groups avoid because Leviticus forbids camel too. Wait, they avoid camel? The Lemba do. Leviticus 11:4 explicitly forbids eating camel. It's an obscure rule. Unless you're following Torah specifically, you wouldn't know it. Banks. These aren't people who read the Bible and started play acting. These are people whose ancestors lived the Bible, brought the practices with them, and passed them down orally for 1,000 years. Inti Oltidi, interrogation room, day. Banks sits with Dr. Joseph Mbawe, 60s, Lemba elder and scholar, Zimbabwean. Mbawe, you want to know our story? Banks. Yes, sir. Mbawe. The white anthropologists came for 100 years, studied us like insects, took notes, then left saying we were confused, that we'd invented our history. Banks, I'm not here to say that. No? No. I'm here because I think you've been telling the truth all along, and I want to help prove it. Mbawe studies her. My father's father told him. His father told him. Back and back and back. We came from the north, from Senna. We were priests. We kept the law. We fled when the temple fell. Banks, which temple? First or second? We don't remember anymore, too many generations, but we remember we were priests. The Buba clan, we are the priestly clan. That's the clan Dr. Parfit tested, the ones with the Cohen marker. Yes, he came in 1992, took our blood. We thought he was another white man looking to prove we were liars, and then he came back crying, said we were right, said we were Kohanim, said our blood proved it. He leans forward. For 1,000 years they called us liars. Confused, primitive. Then the science says we told the truth. But did anyone apologize? Did anyone say we should have believed you? Banks, no. Oh, no. They just moved on. Published papers, won awards. We're still here. Still Lemba. Still Hebrew. Still waiting for the world to see us. What do you want people to know? Mbai, that we didn't disappear. We didn't assimilate away into nothing. We survived. We kept the covenant even when no one was watching, even when everyone said we weren't real. His voice cracks. We are real. Inti. Bullpen. Day. The team watches the Mbawe interview. Several are wiping eyes. Cheney's right. The evidence came in. The DNA proved it. And the world just shrugged. Banks, because acknowledging them means acknowledging all the others. The Igbo. The Beta Israel. The groups in Ghana, Uganda, Mali, Okafor. And if you acknowledge them, you have to ask what happened to their relatives. The ones who didn't stay in these communities, the ones who were captured, the ones who were put on ships. Silence. That's the bridge we need to build. We've proven Hebrew communities existed in Africa from 70 AD onward. Now we need to prove what happened to them when the slave traders arrived. How do we do that? Banks, colonial records, slave ship manifests, plantation documents. The paper trail is there. We just have to follow it. Int. SLED evidence room, night. Riley alone again, surrounded by digitized colonial documents. He pulls up a Portuguese record from 1526 São Tomé. Captured several tribes from interior. These Negroes are peculiar. They refuse pork, keep a day of rest, speak of laws from their god. They are educated, some literate, will fetch higher price in Lisbon. Another document, Dutch, 1640, Elmina Castle. Cargo includes 200 from Calabar region. Among them 40 who claim royal blood. They practice strange rituals, will not work on their Sabbath, had to be disciplined severely. Another, British, 1756, Cape Coast. Acquired stock from Igbo territories. These are difficult slaves, rebellious, maintain tribal structure, refuse to forget their customs. Recommend separation upon arrival in Charleston. Riley prints them all. His hands don't shake anymore. Now they're steady, angry. Riley has created a new map. Pins connect Hebrew community locations to slave fort locations to departure ports. Banks enters, stops, Banks. Riley, they're the same places. The Hebrew communities we just documented, they're in the exact regions where the slave forts were built. He traces the lines. Riley, Igbo territories, Calabar, Bonny. Major slave ports. Lemba ancestors passed through Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Portuguese slave routes. Beta Israel in Ethiopia captured and sold through Red Sea slave trade. Ghana communities, Elmina Castle, Cape Coast Castle. Banks. The forts were placed there deliberately. Riley or the raids targeted those areas. Either way, the result is the same. Hebrew communities that had survived in Africa for over 1,000 years were captured and shipped out. Banks, Deuteronomy 28:68. The Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Riley, it's not metaphor. It's geography. It's history. It's documented fact. Banks stares at the map. We need to trace specific families. Show the connection between African Hebrew communities and enslaved populations in the Americas. How? The names were changed. Records destroyed. Banks, not all records. Some families kept oral traditions. Some remembered. We find those stories. Banks presents the findings to the team. Banks, here's what we can now prove. She writes on the board. Established facts. 1. Hebrew refugees migrated into Africa after 70 AD. 2. Multiple communities maintained Hebrew practices for 1,000 plus years. 3. Genetic evidence confirms Middle Eastern Levantine ancestry. 4. Linguistic evidence shows Hebrew language retention. 5. Cultural practices match biblical Torah requirements. 6. Communities located in regions targeted by slave trade. Now we connect the last dot. We prove that members of these communities were captured and enslaved. That's episode 5. Okay, Arab slave trade comes first, chronologically, before the Europeans. We need to document that too. Because Deuteronomy 28 doesn't just predict the transatlantic trade, it predicts multiple waves of enslavement. She points to verse 64 on the screen. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth, even unto the other end of the earth. Banks, all people, all nations. They were scattered everywhere. Arab lands, Indian Ocean, transatlantic, every direction. Chen, that's comprehensive. Riley. And it all starts happening after they're established in Africa. They settle, they build, they think they're safe. Okay, then the raiders come. Inti Salt, Roof Night, Banks and Okafor stand alone. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Okafor, why are you so invested in this? This isn't just a case for you. Banks is quiet for a long moment. Banks, my grandmother. Before she died, she told me stories. Said her grandmother told her we were different, that we kept the Sabbath once, that we didn't eat certain things, that we came from the old country. Where was the old country? She didn't know, just across the water. Her grandmother was born enslaved in South Carolina, and she said they were Hebrew people. But nobody believed her. Okafor puts a hand on Banks's shoulder. So this is personal. Banks, every black person in America has a grandmother like mine. Someone who whispered the truth, someone who remembered. But we were taught it was just folklore, slave religion, confused old people. She turns to Okafor. What if they weren't confused? What if they were right? Okafor. Then millions of people have been lied to about who they are for generations. Banks. And we're going to prove it. Fade out. Screen text. Genetic studies have confirmed Middle Eastern ancestry in multiple African communities claiming Hebrew origin, including the Lemba 1999, Beta Israel 2010s, and populations in Nigeria 2010s. These communities maintained Hebrew practices including eighth-day circumcision, Sabbath observance, dietary laws, and oral traditions of migration from ancient Israel. By 1500 AD, these communities had been established in Africa for over 1,000 years. They were in the direct path of the slave trade. Deuteronomy 28:64, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth.